It all starts in a gloomy forest where they say there are 3 types of crazy people on the battlefield. The first type are those who have already lost everything and are just looking for a way to meet their end. The second type are the ones consumed by revenge who now cannot see anything else. And then there's the third type, a mysterious man riding toward 2 soldiers. As he gets closer, the hooded man starts whispering some strange words. Confused by the situation, the guards wonder what that guy is mumbling about. Losing patience, one of the soldiers yells at the rider to get out of the way and move. But the hooded man completely ignores him and keeps speaking his magical words. At that, the guard points his crossbow at him and calls him a jerk for not obeying. The mysterious guy then raises his hands as if he were finishing a spell. And from the sky, a huge blue lightning bolt appears and starts descending at high speed. The 2 soldiers are terrified by it and wonder what that lightning is. Soon after, the bolt hits the ground and causes a gigantic explosion of energy. With that, the guards are thrown back while screaming desperately for help. When the dust settles, we see that the man was actually a very powerful young mage. The scene then takes us to Ritsuki Kudoyama, a young man who just got into college. This was the happiest moment of his life because he had received his acceptance letter. Excited about the news, the young man happily walks on his way with his cell phone in hand. But suddenly, everything goes dark, and what we see is a red mark of a sudden end. On the ground, he thinks about how bad his life was and that now everything would get better for him. The boy cannot believe he passed away in such a silly way just when his life was about to start. However, when he opens his eyes again, he realizes he is in a baby's body. He was reborn as An, the son of peasants, and his parents find his black hair strange. His new family were farmers, so obviously they lived in absolute poverty. The family was large, made up of his parents' 2 older brothers and 1 sister. And while his family worked, An and his sister would go out to look for food. On one of those days, 2 boys saw him and started insulting him, calling him a crow. An gets angry and thinks that he had no choice but to be born with that hair color. He complains about being reborn poor in the Middle Ages and having such a hard life. But at that moment, a system window appears reflected in his eye, leaving him surprised. The status window finally pops up and shows the name N. Raven to the young man. The system starts to describe him, and the boy gets tense waiting for the rest. But to his surprise, the system calls him a nobody, and this leaves the guy shocked. He accepts it because he thinks he could not do anything anyway, even with a status window. His life would just be manual labor to pay off debts without earning absolutely anything. As the heir to his parents' debts, the protagonist's future looked pretty bleak. With that, he does not even dream of a profession other than a simple farmer. Besides that, the young man regrets not having any chance to learn something new in this life. He imagines himself as a knight in shining armor fighting with his sword. Next, he sees himself as a famous painter creating incredible works of art with his brush. N. Raven is also sure he would be a great scholar if he had the opportunity. Discouraged, the boy wonders if there is any place that would accept him in his condition. At that moment, his little sister watches him with a piece of fruit in her mouth looking adorable. With a smile, N offers his fish to her, and she thanks him, calling him Big Brother. The little girl then suggests they look for dessert, and he agrees to go with her. The 2 then go to a part of the forest and find a bush full of berries. While the girl runs to the fruit and asks her not to wander off too far. Happy as can be, the little girl starts eating the berries from the bush as her dessert. The protagonist smiles, thinking about how fast she grew up and learned the word dessert. But suddenly, the guy feels a strange presence and immediately goes on high alert. Behind the bushes, a giant bear appears, watching the 2 of them with a threatening look. The 2 children are completely terrified by the sight of the huge creature in front of them. The protagonist is paralyzed with fear, not knowing how to react in that dangerous situation. With a scary roar, the bear stands up, showing off its colossal size. Then, the beast raises its paw with sharp claws, getting ready to strike. Without hesitating, N runs and grabs his sister to try to protect her from the monster's attack. Out of nowhere, a blue lightning bolt hits the bear head-on, making the creature scream in agony. The creature is electrocuted by the mysterious magic, and its body shakes violently. After a few seconds, the bear finally falls defeated to the ground after the surprise attack. The young man is confused by the smoke, not understanding what had just happened there. Through the smoke, a voice says she might have overdone it a bit with the power. As it clears, we see a woman with glasses who greets the little boy. With a smile, she adjusts her glasses and asks if that is the Feldenberg territory. The protagonist confirms and wonders who this person is that took down the bear. Then she introduces herself as Eurydice, a wandering mage who travels the world. And Raven is shocked to hear the word mage and cannot believe his eyes. He remembers hearing that mages are very powerful beings who appear on battlefields. Furthermore, they use elegant spells with immense destructive power. The boy does not understand why someone so strong would be in a small town like his. Eurydice then reveals that she is looking for a boy with black hair in that town. She asks if there are other boys with black hair, and Ain replies that it is just him. With a satisfied smile, the mage says she has found the right person then. Surprised, the guy points to himself and asks if she is talking about him. The woman remembers in order to find a black-haired boy in Feldenberg. The person said good things would happen if she made him her disciple. Eurydice analyzes the boy and wonders if she should really take him as her apprentice. She laughs and says the space-time mage was completely serious. Ain thinks he heard that all mages were weird, but she seems nice. He remembers the incredible power of the magic that vaporized the bear with a single hit. Gathering his courage, the young man approaches and asks if he can ask her a question. The boy asks about the magic she used on the bear moments before. The woman notices his interest in magic and looks at him with a curious smile. She says it is nothing special, and that he could do the same if he learned it. The mage claims that anyone can master magic, which makes En hopeful. With his eyes shining, the protagonist asks if he can also learn to use magic. The woman looks at him with a mysterious smile and slowly approaches him. She puts her hand on his head and says it is possible if he finds a good teacher. A vision of an older En as a powerful mage pops into his mind. The mage reaches out her hand and offers to teach him everything about the world of magic. She invites him to become her apprentice, leaving the boy speechless at the proposal. The protagonist realizes this could be his big chance to completely change his life. With that, a new path opens up for him, something very different from being a simple farmer. So he shakes the mage's hand, accepting the deal and eager to start working with her. Time passes and now we see a windmill on top of a cliff where they train. Sitting in a chair, and Raven is startled by the amount of books in front of him. The main book was about Meronius, the basics of everything involving the magic universe. Aretas says she finally got permission from his parents and the local lord to take him. Determined, the boy says he is ready and will do his best throughout the training. With everything set, the mage asks if they can begin, and the guy happily agrees. The system shows Ain's progress at 1% while he studies the book. After a lot of studying, his progress goes up to 27%, and he keeps reading. Hiding behind a pile of books, his progress is already at 53%. The system screen displays that his Meronius learning is at 99%. Then he finally finishes and becomes able to use the official magical language of the Archmage. 7 years pass since En started his intense training with the Mage Aretas. His master then announces that his classroom studies are finally over. Now older, the guy agrees to move on to the next step, and the system shows his evolution. The scene changes to a blue sky with clouds and mountains, a very peaceful setting. But suddenly En appears falling from the sky at high speed and screaming in despair. On the ground, his master watches him, and he asks if she is not taking the training a bit too fast. The boy yells that everything he learned in the last 6 years was just Meronius. While plummeting toward the ground, the young man keeps screaming desperately for help. From afar, his master yells for him to listen to the voices around him. Confused and panicking, Raven wonders what voices she is talking about. He cannot hear anything but the sound of the wind and starts to despair over the situation. Suddenly, he hears human voices and realizes they are flying just like him. He wonders if what he is hearing is Meronius itself, the language of magic. And with that, a new system window pops up, showing that he acquired air magic. The protagonist wonders if these are the great mysteries of Mother Nature. Back on the ground, the mage laughs at his face, and Ain just tells her to enjoy the moment. His master explains that mages borrow power by communicating with nature. With a smile on her face, the woman says that is what they call true magic. The protagonist looks thoughtful as he repeats the word magic to himself. Aretas then says that now that he hears the voice of the wind, he needs to listen to the next one. With a determined look, the guy says she can leave everything to him. The mage then points at the young man and says they are going to start with water magic. Next, we see the boy underwater, complaining about the bubbles and trying to use magic. Without giving him a break, his master announces that the next training will be with ice magic. Now in a freezing place, Ain shivers from the cold inside a barrel, feeling his body freeze. Even exhausted, Aretas praises him, saying he is learning everything very fast. The woman points her finger like a gun and says the next element is already waiting. A huge wall of fire appears in front of the apprentice, leaving him quite scared. Completely terrified by the flames, the young man desperately screams for his master. Voices in the fire wonder what he is, and if they should burn him right there. With his eyes wide, the boy keeps screaming for help as the fire grows. The training shifts to a dark, damp cave where the guy seems to be alone. Standing in the darkness, he wonders if earth magic will be the last one to train. The guy does not understand anything the earth says and thinks it is an alien language. The voices say strange things about what flows and what does not move. Because of this, the protagonist starts to think he might not have an aptitude for this magic. He then decides he needs to rack up more training somewhere else to improve. But a bonus skill window appears, and the boy is surprised by the system. The young man realizes he is a player with advantages in this world and cracks a smile. Without understanding the voice of the earth, the guy decides to level up his magic using his points. As he does this, he touches the cave wall, and a blue light begins to glow. The voice of the earth is now clear and talks about the lava flowing beneath the ground. The ground warns him to be careful because an earthquake could make the lava rise. The young man decides to leave quickly and tell his master that he heard the voice of the earth. With a serious expression, the boy focuses and says the words fire and burn. A staff in his hand lights up like a torch, illuminating his determined face. Suddenly, a mysterious voice complains about the light and says it hates it with all its might. The young man looks around, startled, and asks if that was the voice of the earth speaking. In total darkness, two glowing blue eyes appear, and a voice says it is not the earth. Then the voice reveals itself as the darkness itself, which leaves the guy completely shocked. The scene then takes us to a full moon night with a clear, starry sky. Sitting on a rock, Aretas thinks she needs to attend the next wizard conference. At that moment, En runs out of the cave, urgently calling for his master. She turns to him with a letter in hand and says with a smile that he did it. With a victorious smile, the guy says he even learned dark magic. The woman's jaw drops and she is completely stunned by her apprentice's revelation. With his arms crossed, The young man confirms he heard the voice of the feared and timid darkness. His master is speechless for a few seconds, still processing the huge news. Worried by her silence, the protagonist asks if his master is feeling okay. She then calls him by his name, and he responds promptly, waiting to hear what she will say. The mage says with a serious expression that it is time to head down the mountain and leave. He asks where they are moving to, but Arita says that is not exactly what she meant. In the middle of a magical forest, she explains that the two of them need to part ways right now. The woman points to the horizon and tells him to go to Chronolink to attend a conference. She says that if it is his destiny, he will find a chronomancer to learn time magic. The guy is confused and wonders why she is talking about time magic out of nowhere. With an amused laugh, the master messes up his hair, leaving him even more confused. She thinks to herself that Ain has a natural affinity for everything mysterious. If her guess is right, the young man will definitely be able to handle the power of time. After the farewell, night falls, and the starry sky appears once again in the forest. Waving goodbye, she says for them to meet in 3 years in the city of Dorwald. The scene then shifts to a bustling city with a beautiful sunset on the horizon. Several merchants are shouting at their stalls, trying to sell their best goods. Now wearing a cape, the protagonist walks through the city, thinking about the Chronomancer conference. He smiles, thinking about how his master is an unpredictable person and that everything was so sudden. A man yells that he will escort anyone heading north, and N remembers that is where he is going. With a smile, the young man thinks he is free and that he will tag along with this group for now. Now at night, he joins a merchant camp sitting around the campfire. Sitting on a log, the guy watches the fire with a very serious expression on his face. An older man approaches and asks if it is his first time traveling north. The protagonist confirms, and the man then asks if he knows about Dragon Mountain. The merchant explains that on that mountain, real dragons usually show up, and those creatures are extremely dangerous and attack anyone who invades their territory. The man puts his arm around Anne and asks if he knows how to fight or at least dodge. Without waiting for an answer, he calls him useless and asks what his profession is. Feeling a bit embarrassed, the guy reveals to the group that he is actually a mage. The merchant is shocked and stammers, asking if the young man is really a true mage. He then starts checking the boy's head while a hooded girl watches them. The mysterious girl keeps looking at the protagonist with a very curious expression. The other men in the group are also surprised and wonder if that guy is really a mage. Anne then asks if there's a problem and wonders about all the tension. The leader of the merchants changes his tune and offers more food to the young man, who turns it down. The guy watches the man walk away with a suspicious look after the scene. One of the guys in the group then mocks him, questioning how that kid could be a mage. They keep joking around and tell him not to make them laugh with a weakling like him. The men say that if he is a mage, then any stray dog is also a mage. The hooded girl approaches the protagonist and tells him to listen carefully. She says that if he is truly a real mage, he should put the men in their place. The girl explains that these mercenaries always look down on anyone who seems quiet. She advises him to show his power and scare them to earn the group's respect. That way they would protect him no matter what happened during the whole trip. The protagonist is caught off guard and a little spooked by the girl's sudden suggestion. He thinks she is right, but he does not know how to do it because he has never been one to get angry. At that moment, one of the mercenaries who was mocking him grabs his bowl of food. The man then spits a leaf he had in his mouth right into the middle of the guy's food. Shocked by the man's behavior, and wonders if he really just spit in his dish. Suddenly, everything starts shaking, and the mercenary wonders if it is an earthquake. Scared, he looks up and sees that the young mage is the one causing it. With his eyes glowing with fury, and asks why he spit in his dish. Completely terrified, the man is left speechless and starts stammering in fear. Without thinking twice, the mercenary throws himself on the ground and apologizes to the master mage. The mercenary says he was just trying to polish the plate, and this annoys the guy. Angrily, Anne yells at him to use water if he really wanted to clean the plate. But the man argues back, saying the river water is too dirty for that. The protagonist then asks what he meant by that, totally confused. He explains that the water is full of parasites and you cannot wash dishes with it. Very casually, he claims spitting is much more hygienic than the water. The word hygienic echoes through the night as birds fly in the dark sky. The protagonist cannot believe what he just heard from the mercenary. He is shocked, thinking about how incredible medieval hygiene standards are. Then the young mage starts whispering some words in a strange tongue. From the fire, a small spark of magic begins to emerge and float in the air. The spark turns into a fire spirit that scares one of the mercenaries. The men wonder what that is and become afraid of the guy's power. The hooded girl watches everything from afar with a surprised look. With a dark glare, Anne tells them to go fetch some water right now. The mercenaries yell that he is furious and they do not know why. After the commotion, the night gets calm and quiet again at the camp. Meanwhile, a group of men appears in the forest, looking for a girl. One of them celebrates that the girl will be all his, and we see her tied to a tree. Far away, the group of travelers finally finds the supposed girl in the forest. Their leader waves and invites her to join them since it is getting dark. But from afar, someone watches them with a serious and unfriendly glare in the darkness. Suddenly, a masked man appears out of nowhere and grabs the hooded girl. The mercenaries are shocked by the appearance and ask who those guys are. Without warning, one of the men is hit by an arrow and falls to the ground hurt. Angrily, the mercenary leader yells, asking how they dare attack his men. Without hesitating, the man orders his companions to attack the mysterious invaders. But the masked guy holding the girl just calls them a bunch of weaklings. The blue-haired girl's eyes go wide with fear as she is held back. Suddenly, the kidnapper is caught off guard and loses his balance from the scare. Because of this, the two end up falling to the ground amidst all that chaos in the forest. The girl then manages to get up while the masked man stays on the ground stunned. Seeing that the target is getting away, one of the men yells for everyone to go after her and catch her. Meanwhile, in the tent, Raven is sleeping peacefully in his bed. He seems to be having a nightmare and complains about the spit the mercenary threw in his dish. A mysterious voice then warns that humans are coming and tells the guy to wake up. The voice insists he wake up fast because the invaders are getting closer. The protagonist then wakes up and sits on the bed, feeling a strange presence in the air. At that moment, the merchant leader bursts into the tent, yelling for a master mage. With a panicked look, the man says the situation is really bad outside. The scene then takes us to the night sky, where the full moon lights up the forest. With a swift movement, our mage charges into the attack against the masked men. And without any mercy, he quickly defeats one of the enemies with his sword. The leader of the attackers steps on a mercenary and says he does not care if they all meet their end. He then orders his men to forget the mercenaries and look for the woman. Scared, the girl hides behind a tree while the men search for her. She panics and starts to think that at this rate, she will be caught at any moment. When she looks up, a sword is already pointed right in front of her head. One of the men finds her and with a creepy smile, says he finally found her. He then threatens her, telling her to get up or he will seriously injure her arms. Completely hopeless, the girl thinks this is her end and everything is over. The man then raises his glowing sword, getting ready to deliver the final strike. But at that moment, we see Raven's eye glowing. Suddenly, a wave of energy explodes and blasts the attacker far away with great force. The girl then looks to the side and sees that the young mage appeared to save her. The blue-haired girl looks at her savior with an expression of surprise and relief. The young mage then reaches out his hand to her and asks her to stay close and follow him. With a confident smile on his face, Raven gets ready to protect everyone. The girl is left speechless and just stares at him with eyes full of admiration. Next, the guy starts gathering the merchants to get them to safety. Everyone groups up, and one of the men yells that they are ready to follow the master mage. With the girl right behind him, the boy says everything is okay and prepares to act. He then starts whispering some words and invokes the power of darkness. A dark energy begins to spread quickly throughout the forest. The mage raises his hand and creates a dome of shadows that covers the whole area. The masked men are confused, unable to see anything, and wonder what that is. Desperate, they light torches, but the darkness is so thick that the light is useless. The merchants also get lost in the dark and end up bumping into each other aimlessly. But a system window shows that Ain activated night vision and can see everything. The merchants huddle together with a torch in hand, trying to find their bearings in the vastness. One of the enemies finds them and with his sword raised, asks where they think they are going. Terrified, the merchants beg for their lives and ask him to spare them. With his eye glowing, the protagonist invokes fire and commands the flames to strike. The masked man is then completely swallowed by the flames and starts screaming in agony. After a few seconds, his defeated body falls to the ground completely scorched. The other two invaders nearby are in shock at the terrifying scene. Ain thinks this will scare them and make them run away, but they recognize him as a mage. A new, stronger enemy appears and orders all his men to attack at once. But the man stops in his tracks and looks up with a look of sheer shock. Suddenly, a giant dragon-like creature appears, roaring at everyone. Without a chance, the advancing man is completely crushed by the creature. The other masked men are paralyzed with fear at the monster's appearance. The merchants are also terrified and cannot believe what they are seeing. Our protagonist is also in shock and stammers, not knowing what that is. It was a drake, a giant, fierce creature that appeared out of nowhere in front of everyone. The drake then attacks the masked men with a wild, uncontrollable fury. Terrified, the merchants yell to the master mage that this is a real dragon. With a serious look, the protagonist realizes the situation has gotten really bad for everyone. The creature glares at the group with a threatening look, and they know they are doomed. But suddenly a system window pops up, saying he has witnessed a primeval mystery. Surprised, Raven sees that he has acquired a new summoning arts skill. He wonders what that new summoning skill is while staring at the creature. The guy then asks himself if that drake is also one of nature's mysteries. He remembers his training and wonders if it is the same thing as the elements. The young man recalls the intense cold during his ice magic training. If the principle is the same, he might be able to communicate with the giant creature. So he gets ready to tap into the drake's power and try a new approach. The merchants remain terrified and call for the master mage, not knowing what to do. The creature glares at the guy with a furious look and lets out a threatening roar. The protagonist gathers his courage and thinks everything is fine and he can do this. He trusts it because the mystery has never betrayed him before and has always helped him win. Placing his hands on his chest, the mage prepares to speak to the giant monster. He then yells to the creature saying he is its friend, leaving everyone confused. The young man even holds an imaginary sign saying no fighting and no bullying. But the drake does not seem to care about that and keeps its furious glare. The merchants wonder what he is doing and decide to stay quiet. With a serious look, the guy focuses to try and understand the creature's voice. Unable to hear anything, he decides there is no other way but to use his points. The mage then decides to put all his points into the new summoning skill. The system window shows his skill leveling up quickly. With wide eyes, the young man realizes he can now hear the creature. He then approaches and tries to talk to the monster, calling him Mr. Drake. The creature roars loudly and tells him to just say what he has to say already. The protagonist thinks this approach was pretty effective for getting its attention. He then stops for a moment and thinks about what he is going to say to the giant monster. Ain says it is not his intention to fight with it, and that he just wants to chat a bit. The Drake calls him absurd and says they are not worthy of fighting him. The merchants wonder if the two are talking via telepathy between themselves. The blue-haired girl watches everything in silence with a nervous expression. The creature says it is too much work to even bother taking them down. With a smile, the guy thinks his plan is working and that it will turn out well. But his face changes to a worried expression at the monster's next words. The Drake roars, saying it is in a very bad mood and does not want to be bothered. The merchants fall to the ground in fear and desperately call out for the master mage. The protagonist gets tense and wonders what he must do to calm the creature down. He understands that the Drake wants him to leave, but he decides to move forward anyway. The creature glares at him with bright eyes full of anger and impatience at the situation. The young man then asks why the Drake is in such a bad mood and offers to help. The monster calls him arrogant and wonders what a mere human could possibly do, and then starts whispering some words in the ancient tongue of arcane magic. A puddle of pure, crystal clear water appears out of nowhere in the dark, gloomy forest. The group of merchants and the girl look at the scene, completely amazed. The Drake is also surprised and watches the mage with a curious look. The guy is then surrounded by an aura of light and shows off his magic to the creature. With a slight smile, the Drake says that is interesting and seems to calm down. With a confident smile, he says he is a humble mage seeking the world's mysteries. The creature watches him with a curious look and a slight smile on its dragon face, and then says everything is fine and that from that moment on, negotiations would begin. Under the moonlight, the mage faces the great Drake with unshakable courage. He thinks the crisis has been averted for now and it is time to show what he can do. With a thoughtful look, he decides he will not have any trouble surviving there. The guy remembers a lesson from his master with a determined look on his face. Auritas taught him that you cannot use magic without communicating with the mysteries, and that is why the relationship he builds with them is the most important thing. She explained that every mystery has a personality, and he needs to understand that. With a smile on his face, he thinks the most important thing for a mage is the art of living. He then decides he will wrap the Drake around his finger and manipulate it to get what he wants. A skill window pops up, and the protagonist looks up how to master summoning magic. He then starts reading the instructions to know how to handle the giant creature. The system says he needs to give the creature incredibly good alcohol, and then he must flatter it like crazy to gain its total trust. The guy is confused by the instructions and wonders what exactly he just read. He thinks it is impossible for an introvert like him to do all that. So he decides he first needs to capture the Drake's heart to succeed. The protagonist approaches the creature, and the Drake asks what he wants now. With a serious look, the guy says he prepared a gift for the great Drake. The creature agrees and tells the young man to bring the gift he prepared. The mage then turns and calls the merchant leader to bring the gift over. He yells for the man to go to the wagon and bring the strongest alcohol they have. A crate full of bottles of drinks is brought to the middle of the forest. But the Drake looks at the bottles and says that is a very stingy gift. With a fake smile, Anne says that in the human world, the smaller the amount, the more expensive it is. He then grabs a bottle and starts pouring the drink into a large wooden mug. The young man offers the drink to the creature and waits to see its reaction to the gift. The monster takes the mug and complains about the strong smell the drink is giving off. With a threatening look, the creature asks if the mage is not plotting something wicked. The guy denies it and says he will drink first to prove the beverage is safe. He then takes the mug and downs the drink all at once in a single gulp. The merchant's jaws drop, shocked by the young mage's courage. With a forced smile, he says the drink is strong but that everything is fine. The Drake then takes the mug and sniffs the drink with a look of suspicion. It then dips its face into the mug and tastes the drink to see if it likes it. The creature holds a small mug with its claws and watches the liquid inside it. Carefully, it tips the mug and takes a small sip to try the beverage. The merchants watch the scene with their hands clasped, hoping everything goes well. After tasting it, the Drake seems to like it, and its face even gets a little flushed. The mage then asks what it thought, and the creature says it is not delicious. But the monster admits that for some reason, the drink is addictive and it wants more. With a smile, N offers another mug and says this one is even better than the first. The night goes by, and the full moon keeps shining in the sky of the dark forest. The creature then drinks an entire barrel and seems to be really enjoying the beverage. The guy notices that the Drake has already drank more than 7 barrels and still has not passed out. He is shocked and thinks that guy is a really good and resistant drinker. The protagonist had planned to run away while the Drake was sleeping, but now he cannot do that. With a tired look, he realizes there is no more alcohol in the wagon to keep going. Suddenly, the Drake asks the guy why he was in a bad mood earlier. The monster then starts to vent and explains the reason for all its sadness. Its face gets flushed and the protagonist wonders why it got so emotional. The creature begins to explain that its nest is in a bad and very cramped spot. But even so, its girlfriend used to say it was cozy, and Anne is shocked to hear it had one. With a tear in its eye, it says that without it knowing, something bad happened. All the other Drakes started making fun of its girlfriend because of it. It felt really bad for her because all of that was entirely its own fault. With a roar of frustration, the monster reveals that it was the one who ended the relationship. Hiding, the merchants get scared by the giant drake's emotional outburst. The creature then starts crying loudly, mourning its failed love life. The merchants get so scared that their souls start leaving their bodies. The protagonist feels bad and realizes the creature's feelings are just like a human's. But the guy gets an idea and decides to use the situation to his advantage. He then turns to the giant creature and calls it over to talk about the issue. With a determined look, the mage says he will fix its nest using his magic. The creature gets emotional and asks, with eyes full of tears, if he will really do that. With a sly smile, the young man says yes, but that he wants something in return for the favor. He then asks the drake to grant him just one single request as payment. After the long night, the day finally dawns and a new sky appears on the horizon. The protagonist walks through the forest with a peaceful expression after everything. One of the merchants wakes up and says he really missed the young mage, Raven. He then starts acting weird and affectionately rubs the guy's forehead. The protagonist gets instantly annoyed by the merchant's behavior. He threatens him, saying he will rip off his fingers if he does not stop that. With a scary face, the mage glares at the man who freezes in fear. The merchant screams in terror and ends up falling backward after the young man's threat. The scare was so big that all the other merchants ended up falling along with him. The blue-haired girl and the group leader get dizzy from the sudden fall. We see that the drake's roar was just a drunken cry and everyone had passed out. The girl asks if the drake went back to the nest, but Ain says it is waiting. The merchants panic and wonder if the creature is waiting to eat them. The guy explains that he made a deal with it to let everyone go safely. The girl is surprised and asks what kind of deal he made with the giant monster. The men think he sacrificed himself for them, and Ain thinks maybe he exaggerated. He then explains that he promised to fix the drake's nest in exchange for their freedom. The merchants start chanting his full name, calling him a great mage. The young man feels awkward with all the yelling and does not know how to react to it. They now imagine that the mage defeated the drake in an epic and legendary battle. The men think he was incredible for reprimanding the creature without any fear. They believe the protagonist made the monster submit to him with his power. Full of emotion, the merchants cry and celebrate the guy's supposed victory. They then swear to protect him with their lives and become one in body and soul. The mage tells them to get ready to leave and not to go ahead without him. The men reply in unison that they are one body and mind and will obey him. The girl says they first need to confirm the number of mercenaries, and one man is shocked. With a serious and determined look, the girl glares at the group of men in front of her. Then she runs into the forest as if she were looking for something. The scene then takes us to a dark cave, which is the great drake's nest. The protagonist arrives at the location and is impressed by the creature's size. The drake yells that it is too late to back out, and the guy says he was just checking. Feeling sleepy, the protagonist thinks that using the Moronius language is very tiring. He decides to wrap this up quickly so he can rest and gets an idea for the nest. With a focused look, the guy prepares to use his earth magic in the cave. He then whispers the words and calls upon the great mystery of Mother Earth. The voice of the earth answers and asks what that human wants with her again. The mage asks for a favor, but the earth says she is busy and not in a good mood. The young man feels like a nuisance for asking the earth for help once again. He then tells the drake that the earth refused to talk and that he will try later. But the protagonist thinks that if he tries again, she will probably get angry. The creature says that if the earth rejected him, there is nothing he can do to help. The guy then turns to the creature, looking surprised by what it said. The drake thanks him for having worked so hard for someone like it and says goodbye. With a sad look, the young mage calls the giant creature's name and stares at it. The monster then asks what the mage's name is, and he introduces himself as Anne Meredith Raven. The creature introduces itself as Drake Longtail and holds out its paw for a handshake. The guy shakes his new friend's hand and a system window pops up with news. He acquires the skill to summon his friend Drake to help him anywhere. The protagonist thinks he got the skill but cannot do anything for a friend. The creature calls Ain's name, and the guy looks at it with a serious expression. To celebrate their friendship, the drake offers a gift and shows off a pile of treasure. The mage thinks that, just as his master said, dragons really do like collecting jewels. He picks up one of the jewels and thinks that if the earth saw that, she would help him right away. The guy then notices something strange about the jewel and gets a brilliant idea. With the jewel in hand, he asks Longtail if he can scribble on the floor a bit. The creature is confused by the request and wonders what he means by scribbling. The mage then draws a large magic circle on the floor with the jewel in his hands. He remembers a lesson from his master on how to handle the mysteries. She taught him to send a gift through a magic circle to appease them. The young man then calls upon the earth once more with a confident smile on his face. He asks the earth to move the rocks and smooth out the cave walls. The jewel shines brightly in the center of the magic circle and begins to float in the air. The circle turns into a portal of light with several glowing magical symbols. The cave then begins to shake, and the walls start moving and widening. A massive explosion of light happens, and a hole opens up in the cave's ceiling. The drake covers its eyes with its paw, impressed by the mage's power. When the light fades, the creature opens its eyes and is shocked by what it sees. The cave has transformed into a spacious and luxurious nest, a gift from the mage. The drake gets emotional, and the guy thinks it is going to cry from so much happiness. The creature says the nest looks beautiful and very spacious, and thanks him profusely. The monster then starts sniffing the air and says the smell is also very nice. It asks if Ain produced that smell with magic, but the guy shakes his head no. Happy as can be, the drake thanks him and gives him a tight hug like a true friend. The creature says that now it will not be ashamed of its girlfriend anymore, and they can have kids. The protagonist has a bored look on his face and does not know how to react to all that. He stands up and calls for the drake, who looks at him with a confused expression. The guy then starts feeling sick and realizes something is wrong with him. With a panicked look, he realizes he is badly hurt and does not know why. The drake gets worried and asks if he is okay, as he is losing a lot of energy. With a serious look, the young mage stares at the creature and passes out in the middle of the cave. The young mage then falls unconscious on the cave floor, and the drake screams his name. Worried about its new friend, the creature carefully holds him in its claws. The scene then shifts, and we see him lying down, wondering what he should do. In a palace, the drake calls out for the mage, urgently trying to get his attention. The blue-haired girl runs into the place wearing a headband. The creature makes a funny, startled face upon seeing the girl running. The young woman is surprised with a drop of sweat running down her face from fear. The drake holds the guy in its paw and brings him close to the girl who ran over. With a confident smile, the protagonist sits on the giant monster's hand. The monster then roars at the girl with a scary face full of anger. With a forced smile, she asks the creature to calm down and listen to her first. She explains that she is friends with the mage and raven, and so it should not eat her. With an awk gesture, she asks if they are good and can be friends now. The drake is confused and wonders if the mage and that weird girl are really friends. The creature then turns to the girl with a serious and slightly suspicious look. Meanwhile, the protagonist remains unconscious, leaning against a wall. Time passes and night falls again in the forest with the moon shining in the sky. A candle lights up the room where the guy is resting and recovering. He then starts waking up and mumbles something as he slowly opens his eyes. The young man wonders what time it is and tries to grab his phone, which is not there. He then feels something soft in his hand and grips it a little tightly. The guy wonders why his phone feels so soft and if the material has changed. He squeezes it again and thinks it feels like a cat's paw, it is so soft. A voice then asks if he is already awake, and the mage opens his eyes, startled. He is faced with the blue-haired girl sitting right next to him on the bed. Surprised, he asks what Kathy is doing there and why she is with him. Confused, he wonders if he is still dreaming about videos on his smartphone. The girl says his head seems messed up and asks him to lie down a bit longer. But he gets up quickly and the girl warns him not to move so suddenly. The protagonist puts his hand to his head and remembers that he had passed out in the cave. He thinks that pushing his summoning magic level made him completely exhausted. He then looks at the girl and wonders if she saw everything that happened. Feeling embarrassed, the guy pulls his hood up and hides his face in his hands, which the girl finds weird. The young man then asks where the drake is, and she says it left out of nowhere. He wonders if his friend went to her place, and thinks that is something he cannot say out loud. With his hand on his head, he apologizes for the trouble and says he is fine now. The mage then asks how she got in, and she says that when she told it they were friends, it let her. The guy is shocked and wonders how she spoke to the creature in the language of the Marrow Raz. Tired and still sleepy, he figures she must have used some kind of translator. The girl then reveals that she followed him even knowing it was dangerous to go there. She gets closer and says she has something to ask him, and the guy agrees. The girl kneels in front of him with a guilty expression on her face. She says all of that happened because of her, and the mage looks at her confused. Ashamed, she apologizes for having caused so much trouble for all of them. The protagonist notices the mood suddenly got heavy and feels awkward. He wonders why she was trembling so much earlier in the dark forest. The girl then clears her throat and pulls herself together after her moment of weakness. She accuses him of being in cahoots with the bandits to take everything from her in the end. The guy is surprised by the accusation and wonders what part of him looks like a bandit. He says it is his face and that a handsome bandit is a fantasy cliché after all. The girl reveals that her real name is Lucy from the noble Talion family. She explains that the bandits were hired by her fiancé to kidnap her. Anne wonders if that is just a couple's fight, but she says it is more than that. Lucy explains that she was planning to go far away so her fiancé would not find her. But after what happened the night before, she lost the confidence to run away alone. The girl then holds the guy's hand and begs for his help to escape. She asks the protagonist to help her run away, and he is left speechless. The mage asks why she is running and if her fiancé did something bad to her. Lucy explains that her family rules the Fianrif region and that they were powerful. But due to a lack of knights, they were exposed to crises from external enemies. At that rate, a territorial war would break out and her family would be destroyed. The church bell rings and we see a scene from Lucy's arranged marriage. She says she was promised to a knight who is the captain of a mercenary group. Because of him, outside forces stopped trying to get their hands on her home. At first, the man seemed happy to become the son-in-law of a baronial family. He would watch her from afar with a satisfied smile about his new social status. The young woman also seemed happy with her fiancé, smiling with a glass in hand. But at some point, he started using his status to exert power and changed. He became a figure of power and started being respected by everyone around him. The man started going out with other women and disregarding her without any shame. Unable to stay quiet, her parents demanded the engagement be annulled. But that man did not accept the decision and took a terrible action against the family. With a look of despair, she reveals that the fiancé gave her parents a bad potion to silence them. The protagonist is completely shocked by the noble girl's revelation. She explains that he did it so he would not lose the power he would gain from the marriage. Anne is stunned by the story and thinks her fiancé is a huge scoundrel. Lucy says that no matter how much he swings his sword, he is just a commoner, and that is why she ran away with the servant's help, as she refuses to marry him. The girl is certain he will keep trying to catch her because of the marriage. With eyes full of tears, she begs the mage to help her escape safely. The guy thinks the situation is complicated and that she is in big trouble. He is shocked that the man heard his in-laws for power and is now chasing her. The protagonist cannot understand the mindset of medieval people chasing power. With tears in her eyes, the young woman begs for his help in the name of her family. The mage wonders why she is asking him for help and if she can trust him. Lucy says the man is petty and would sell him out for a few silver coins. But she claims she can give him anything he wants in exchange for his help. The guy is surprised and asks if she is serious about giving in everything. Desperate, she says yes and that if he wishes, she can even give him the Italian house. The protagonist then sits down and stares at the girl with a serious, thoughtful look. He thinks about the possibility of marrying her and becoming a real noble. The guy pictures himself climbing a staircase to a huge golden gate, a big opportunity. But he thinks about what would happen to his title as a mage and his life as a noble, and realizes that if he helps Lucy, he can gain more experience and money to travel. For now, he decides to get rid of whoever is chasing them and see what happens. Clearing her throat, the girl grabs his attention, waiting for an honest answer. The young man says she would be better off finding someone more skilled with a blade. With tears in her eyes, Lucy loses hope and starts crying silently. He then kneels in front of her and says that if there is payment involved, he can help. With a smile, he says that at the very least, he can help get her safely far away. But the guy warns her that after that, she will be on her own. The young woman then starts crying, and the mage wonders why she is in tears. Confused, he asks if he said something wrong, since he was just saying he would help. With a grateful smile, she holds his hands and thanks him for the help. Crying tears of joy, Lucy thanks En for everything he is doing for her. In a gesture of gratitude, the girl hugs him tightly, and he has no reaction. The protagonist just stares at her with a serious and slightly confused expression. The two then hug in the middle of the cave, and a romantic mood fills the air. The scene then shifts to the next day, with the sun shining brightly in the sky. Drake Longtail is lying on a beach chair with sunglasses on his face. Looking very stylish, the creature adjusts its glasses and faces the two humans in front of it. It then greets its friend, and the mage walks over to chat with it. The two drakes chat, and the protagonist's friend says it is doing great. The guy and the girl then decide it is time to head down the mountain and leave. The mage thanks it for the gift, and the creature tells them to climb on its back. The drake then lies down on the ground, getting ready to take the two far away from there. With a smile, the guy says thanks and climbs onto the great dragon friend's back. Lucy is confused, and the creature calls her Inn's girlfriend, telling her to get on. The drake roars at the girl, and the protagonist says it is nothing like that. The girl wonders what they are talking about and gets a puzzled look on her face. The guy reaches out his hand to her and helps her onto the creature's back. With a confident smile, the mage tells her to climb up, and she grabs his hand. The guy pulls her up, and she climbs onto the drake's back with his help. With both of them on its back, the creature says they can now head to their destination. The drake then runs and takes flight, carrying the two far away from the mountain. The mage yells to go fast, and they fly at high speed through the blue sky. Meanwhile, the merchants discuss the bandits who attacked them the night before. One of them says that if the bandits are still around, they are doomed. Another wonders if bandits would really roam the forest like that. They conclude that bandits have no brains and will come after them. Their leader calls for a decision, and everyone turns to him waiting for an order. With a serious expression, the man clears his throat and gets ready to give his verdict. He then opens his eyes and, with a determined look, says they are going to wait for the mage. Everyone agrees with the master's decision and decides to follow his word. They believe the mage is fine and is just running late because of some problem. But 10 minutes later, they are ambushed by bandits and regret the decision. The bandit leader shows up wearing an eye patch and tells them to stop whining. He threatens the merchants with his sword, saying he will be quick with them. The merchants beg for their lives and say they will hand over everything they have. The man then asks for the girl, and the merchants are confused by the demand. He explains he heard there was a pretty girl with dark blue hair traveling with them. The merchants remember the girl, and the bandit leader grows impatient. They then recall that the girl he is looking for is Kathy, who was with them. The bandit leader asks where she is and orders his men to find her right now. The merchants look around and realize the girl is no longer there. With a malicious smile, the man figures out what happened and prepares to act. The merchants scream desperately for their lives, calling out for the Lord Mage. One of the bandits hears the scream and wonders what that noise in the forest was. He then announces that the mage is back riding a drake and that everyone is saved. The merchants cry tears of relief and celebrate the arrival of their great savior. With her face flushed, she is filled with hope seeing the guy's reflection in her eyes. The young woman then starts crying again, and the mage does not understand her reaction. He steps closer and asks if he said something wrong, since he was just trying to help. The girl then holds his hand tightly and thanks him for all the help. With tears in her eyes, Lucy thanks En for everything he has done for her so far. In a gesture of gratitude, she hugs him tightly, and he has no reaction to the touch. The protagonist just stares at her with a serious and slightly confused expression. The two then hug in the middle of the cave, and a romantic mood fills the air. The The scene then shifts to the next day with the sun shining brightly in the sky. Drake Longtail is lying on a beach chair with sunglasses on his face. Looking very stylish, the creature adjusts its glasses and faces the two humans in front of it. It then greets its friend, and the mage walks over to chat with it. With its girlfriend back, the Drake asks how its friend is feeling now. Ian says they should start heading down the mountain because everyone is waiting for them. The guy thanks it for the gift, and the creature offers to take them down there. The Drake then lies down on the ground, getting ready to take the two far away from there. With a smile, the mage says thanks and climbs onto the great dragon friend's back. The Drake turns to Lucy, calls her Ian's girlfriend, and tells her to get on too. The creature roars at the girl, and the protagonist says it is nothing like that. The girl wonders what they are talking about and gets a puzzled look on her face. The guy reaches out his hand to her and helps her onto the creature's back. With a confident smile, the mage tells her to climb up, and she grabs his hand. The guy pulls her up, and she climbs onto the Drake's back with his help. With both of them on its back, the creature says they can now head to their destination. The Drake then runs and takes flight, carrying the two far away from the mountain. The mage yells to go fast, and they fly at high speed through the blue sky. Meanwhile, the merchants discuss the bandits who attacked them the night before. One of them says that if the bandits are still around, they are doomed. Another wonders if bandits would really roam the forest like that. They conclude that bandits have no brains and will come after them. Their leader calls for a decision, and everyone turns to him waiting for an order. With a serious expression, the man clears his throat and gets ready to give his verdict. He then opens his eyes and, with a determined look, says they are going to wait for the mage. Everyone agrees with the master's decision and decides to follow his word. They believe the mage is fine and is just running late because of some problem. But 10 minutes later, they are ambushed by bandits and regret the decision. The bandit leader shows up wearing an eye patch and tells them to stop whining. He threatens the merchants with his sword, saying he will be quick with them. The merchants beg for their lives and say they will hand over everything they have. The man then asks for the girl, and the merchants are confused by the demand. He explains he heard there was a pretty girl with dark blue hair traveling with them. The merchants remember the girl, and the bandit leader grows impatient. They then recall that the girl he is looking for is Kathy, who is with them. The bandit leader asks where she is and orders his men to find her right now. The merchants look around and realize the girl is no longer there. With a malicious smile, the man figures out what happened and prepares to act. The merchants scream desperately for their lives, calling out for the Lord Mage. One of the bandits hears the scream and wonders what that noise in the forest was. He then announces that the mage is back riding a drake and that everyone is saved. The merchants cry tears of relief and celebrate the arrival of their great savior. As soon as they reach the city, the merchants spot Aen and run toward him screaming. The leader invites him to go together to see the local lord of the city they arrived in. But the protagonist thinks that to keep Lucy safe, it is best to avoid the local nobility. One of the men then pulls the girl aside and tells her to come along if she has nowhere to go. The girl then looks at the mage, hoping he will say something about the situation. The guy puts his arm around her and says they are going to the inn to rest before leaving. The merchants' jaws drop, and they wonder if the two are going to rest together. The girl puts on an adorable face, while the young man just keeps his serious expression. He sighs, saying he is exhausted, while the girl happily walks by his side. From afar, the merchant leader watches them and, with a dark aura, says he already knew. With a goofy smile, he says the two are together and gets all happy about the idea. A green-haired noble with a suspicious look watches them from a distance. The girl explains that pretending to be with him is an easier way to keep the idiots away. She then asks why he is so polite to commoners, and he remembers his past. The guy reveals that he is also a commoner, being the son of a simple farmer from the countryside. He says there is no real reason and that he is just following his master's example. The girl looks at him with a thoughtful and curious expression after the young man's revelation. She asks what his plan is, and the guy says he is going to visit Countess Katina. The young woman says she is her aunt and will help, but Aen questions their relationship. With a mischievous smile, the girl says they got along well enough to help. The protagonist gets suspicious and thinks that if it was just well enough, it might be a problem. The girl gets annoyed by his distrust and asks if he is doubting her aunt. He says that if she is so sure, then the aunt must be a good person after all. The young woman says it is better than a stranger anyway, since others just want to marry her. She then offers herself to Aen, but the guy thinks she is just talking nonsense again. He reminds her that the contract ends at Katina, and Lucy calls him cold for dismissing her like that. The mage then replies that she is not the only girl in the world for him to care so much. With a vein popping on her forehead, the girl gets really angry at the young man's response. She then runs in the right direction, calling him an idiot and showing the way to the inn. The two arrive at the inn's door, and a bell rings announcing their arrival. As they walk in, a voice welcomes them and they look around the cozy place. The guy approaches the counter and asks to stay a few nights, and also for a bath. He then places a bag of coins on the counter and asks if that covers the costs. With a smile, the woman says it is more than enough and that she will prepare the rooms. But she asks if the young lady with him will also want to take a bath. Completely nervous, the girl denies it and says she is fine and does not need a bath. The mage questions her, asking if she thinks the water is dirty like the river. With a flushed face, she tries to explain but cannot find the right words. The young man is completely confused, not understanding the reason for all her nervousness. What he does not know is that medieval baths offer absolutely no privacy for guests. Upon seeing the bathing area, it finally clicks for the guy, and he is completely shocked. With a forced smile, he tells the owner that only he will take a bath for now. She lets out a sigh of relief at not having to go through that awkward situation. But right after, she notices several men in the inn staring at her strangely. The protagonist notices the looks and instantly goes on high alert regarding the situation. He tells her to put her hood up, and Lucy asks him to call her Kathy to keep her cover. The young man rushes her, saying everyone is looking and they need to be quick. Seeing that she will not hurry, he puts the hood on the girl's head himself. But the men at the table keep their malicious smiles and keep whispering to each other. Later that night, outside the inn, a suspicious voice asks about the woman. Outside, two men comment that they have never seen a beauty like the girl's and call her an angel. One of them points out that she is accompanied only by a skinny, pretty boy. With a malicious smile, they decide they are going to kidnap the girl to have some fun. The group leader figures they will not stay long and plans his next move. With a determined look, they decide they are going to kidnap the young woman that very day. The scene then takes us to a grand castle where someone is discussing business. Sitting on his throne, the Baron of Riverville tells the man to do his best and not cause trouble. The merchant leader then bows and thanks him profusely for the opportunity he received. He thinks that if he can get in the Baron's good graces, he might even spend some time in the castle. Then a light bulb goes off in his head, and he decides to tell him about the master mage he met. With a bit of hesitation, he calls out to the lord, who asks what he wants now. The man says it is a secret, but out of his great respect, he cannot stay quiet. The Baron is flattered by the compliment and tells the man to say what he has to say. With a serious expression, the merchant reveals that he encountered a mage during his travels. He then starts acting out in an exaggerated way how the mage managed to tame the drake and save them. With a mysterious smile, he says it is still too early for the Baron to be surprised. And to everyone's shock, he reveals that the master mage is in the city right at that moment. Completely stunned, the Lord stands up and yells, asking what he just said. He thinks this is bad because if a moody mage gets angry, he might unleash a drake in the territory. The Baron pictures the young mage with a furious look full of hatred, ready to attack. In his mind, a drake appears destroying everything with its fire while the people run in terror. With a look of dread, the noble thinks the situation could get even worse than he imagines. Because there is already a group of lunatics from another region in his domain, the Knights of Santiago. They are monks and martial artists who hunt demons and monsters in the name of God. This group of knights proclaims themselves as the great protectors of all humanity. One of these Knights of Santiago appears in full armor with an imposing glare. Next, we see our protagonist with a serious expression on his determined face. The Baron then imagines the two groups meeting and causing massive destruction. The mere thought of a conflict between them already causes a huge impact on his mind. Sweat drips down the Lord's face, unable to stop thinking about the worst-case scenario. With a desperate shout, he urgently calls for his commander to give an order. The commander then responds promptly and places himself at His Excellency's disposal. The Lord orders them to give the merchant a room, and the commander agrees with the order. He then orders that the Knights of Santiago be called to his castle immediately. The Baron wants to bring them close before any bigger trouble starts in his territory. Back at the inn, we see Anne and Lucy eating peacefully, sitting at a table. The innkeeper approaches and apologizes, saying he will prepare the bath immediately. But his wife sighs and says she has not even drawn the water for the bath yet. The guy then says he will do it himself, and the woman apologizes for the inconvenience. He then tells the girl to go upstairs as soon as she finishes eating, and she agrees with a nod. The young woman then continues eating her soup with a calm and serene expression. But one of the men from earlier watches her from afar with a malicious smile full of intent. After finishing her meal, the girl starts walking up the stairs toward the room. She then walks down a dark, quiet hallway without realizing she is being followed. Suddenly, a hand grabs her by the arm and pulls her into the darkness of the hallway. The man asks if she is the companion of the black-haired gentleman who left. Startled by the sudden approach, the young woman asks who he is and what he wants with her. With a fake smile, he says he is an errand boy hired by N himself. The man shows a coin and says the mage asked him to take her to the docks right now. He explains that an incident happened when Ain went to the backyard to take his bath. She then thinks those men of her fancies have finally found her again. The man says there is no time and asks her to come with him, and the girl agrees. Without suspecting a thing, the young woman goes downstairs with the kidnapper and follows him. As they leave the inn, the door closes, and the girl walks right into the trap. The noble girl runs after the man, having no idea of the danger waiting for her outside. But suddenly, she stops and realizes something is very wrong with the situation, because she sees Ain prepping the fire for his bath and realizes she fell for a scam. The man then grabs her from behind and stops her from screaming or asking for help. The girl then screams desperately for help, but is already too late to get away. Outside, the mage hears her scream and realizes something bad has happened. He then turns around and wonders if that desperate scream really came from Lucy. But suddenly, a man appears from behind and tries to hit him with a piece of wood. With a swift movement, the guy dodges the attack, and the man misses the swing. The attacker then loses his balance and falls to the ground without hitting his target. The protagonist realizes those are not the fiancé's thugs, but rather small fry. He then sees the men carrying the girl in a sack and gets ready to act. With a furious glare, the young man runs to catch them and save his companion. The mage then yells that he will not let them get away and grabs one of the kidnappers. Annoyed, the guy complains that he lost the other dude because of that idiot in the way. Suddenly, the man is surrounded by an aura of energy and is completely paralyzed. Scared, the kidnapper wonders what that is and gets terrified of the mage's power. The young man thinks that with his current strength, he cannot do exactly what he wants. A dark voice then says the light is fading and that it is time to play. He then recognizes the voice and realizes it is the darkness itself talking to him. With a shout, the protagonist invokes the power of darkness, and a shadowy energy emerges. The man is then completely swallowed by the shadows and cannot see anything else. The mage says the man cannot see anything because it got dark all of a sudden. With a scary look, he reveals that he is the only one who can see within shadow magic. In the middle of the darkness, the man screams and begs the mage to spare his life. The guy then hears footsteps and wonders if that guy called for backup. With his foot on the man, the young mage braces himself for what is coming. The protagonist then asks the kidnapper where they took the girl. Suddenly, the man's vision returns, and he stares at the mage with a look of pure terror. Angrily, the young man yells at him to answer and hits him in the head. But suddenly, a sword is pointed at the mage's back, interrupting him. An older man then says that is enough and orders the young man to stop. The protagonist turns to the man with an unfriendly expression on his face. The knight asks if he was the one who summoned the darkness that appeared moments ago. The young man confirms and says he is the mage who summoned the darkness to defeat the man. The knights glare at him with a serious and intimidating look after the revelation. The guy senses an incredible bloodlust coming from the old man and wonders who he is. The kidnapper then takes the chance and crawls on the ground, begging for help. The man says that Mage tried to end his life for no reason and asks to be saved. The knight leader then grabs the man by the collar and glares at him with disgust. With a smirk, the knight says he understands the situation and what happened. He then says that if the young man is a mage, that it is very possible he did that. Meanwhile, the fire for the protagonist's bath keeps burning intensely. The mage is confused by the man's words and asks what he meant by possible. The knight then replies that this is just how mages naturally are, and he does not mind. The group's leader says this is what mages naturally do and glares at him. The knight claims mages are beings who do exactly whatever they please. Annoyed by the generalization, the protagonist gets a look of pure anger on his face. One of the other men then questions what their leader thinks a mage actually is. With his hand on his staff, the young mage holds back from exploding with rage right there. He then yells that that guy attacked him first and that everyone there is an idiot. The scene then shows us the tension in the air, with the mage facing the group of knights alone. The guy realizes he raised his voice and fears the old man might get mad and draw his sword. But to his surprise, the knight leader smiles and does not seem angry at all. The man says his way of speaking makes him sound like a skilled mage, which shocks him. Another knight then steps in and says that even so, there was no need to use wicked magic. The protagonist is confused by the term and wonders what this wicked magic is. The man explains that using darkness to blind is an act of avoiding the sun, the eye of the heavens. With his arms crossed, he firmly claims that hiding in darkness is an act of cowardice. The young man processes the information and grasps the twisted logic that man is using. He realizes they must be followers of some religion that worships the sun and the light. Clearing his throat, the mage then gets ready to destroy the knight's argument. He asks if it is not the law of heaven that day and night coexist, and the man is taken aback. The guy yells that he just borrowed the truth from the mysteries and asks what the problem is. The knight is left speechless and totally lost by the young mage's logic. The other men in the group also get confused and start whispering to each other. One of the knights has a drop of sweat running down his face, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, everyone changes their attitude and says he is right and they misunderstood him. The protagonist is shocked by the shift and thinks those medieval people are crazy. He then says his sister was kidnapped and he needs to go find her right now. The leader asks if he attacked the man for being an accomplice, and the kidnapper denies everything. With a threatening glare, the knights turn to the man and seem to believe the mage. The master then orders one of his men to keep an eye on the kidnapper and not let him escape. Next, he apologizes to the young mage for taking up his valuable time with that. As an apology, the knight then offers his help to rescue the girl. The scene then takes us to the sunset at the docks, where a boat is speeding away. The group then runs at full speed toward the docks to catch up to the kidnappers. When they arrive, the leader points to the boat and says that is the place the witnesses mentioned. The men are furious to see the villains trying to escape by boat. Ain thinks it is dangerous to move by boat with the sun setting, and the knights get restless. The protagonist then calls out to everyone to try to calm things down and think of a plan, but the leader puts a hand on his shoulder and stops him from talking to the group. With a fiery speech, he tells them to pierce the darkness and orders the boats to be launched. The Knights of Santiago then cheer loudly and get ready to follow their master. The guy thinks they really are an order of knights and that protecting the weak is cool. He tries to say it is dangerous, but the leader tells him not to be so formal and to relax. The young man says that is just his normal way of speaking, and the knight laughs at the situation. One of the men says he found a hook and that he is going to pull the boat closer to the dock. The master of the knights is shocked by the idea and turns to the protagonist. He asks if the practitioner of white magic can use water magic to help them. The knight explains that the mages he saw in battle only used one type of magic. Plus, he thinks someone at the introductory level should not even be able to use magic. With a shout, the guy calls upon the power of water and summons the river to manifest. A huge wave of water then rises, and everyone is impressed by the young man's power. The giant wave rushes forward at high speed toward the kidnapper's boat. The group of knights drops their jaws as this water magic beats what they saw in the war. On the boat, the kidnappers get scared and ask what is happening with the water. One of them then looks back and gets completely confused, not understanding the situation. From the impact of the wave, the two men are thrown all over the place uncontrollably. The force of the water is so strong that the boat flips, and the two fall right into the river. Back at the docks, In watches as the knights bring back the men and the girl. The young woman then runs toward him and hugs him tightly while crying out of relief. The knight leader scolds him and asks why he's making his sister cry. The young man then comforts her, saying she went through a lot but that she is fine now. With the sunset in the background, the guy hugs her to try to calm her down from the huge scare. With his social battery drained, the protagonist sighs, exhausted by all the emotion at once. He thinks he needs to go back to the inn and take a bath so he can finally relax. But just then, two knights ride by yelling that there is an emergency in the city. They are Bernard Kaltz, the Lord's son, and Hansen, a knight of Riverbill. From afar, they spot smoke and are certain it is from a battle. Hansen gets worried and thinks his lord's fears have come true. The knight thinks it is a headache to bring the young master, who knows nothing, along. With a drop of sweat on his face, the man gets even more stressed by the situation. Near the bath, two men playfully offer to wash each other's backs. The protagonist turns down the offer and just thanks the two men for their kindness. Suddenly, a loud noise is heard from outside, grabbing everyone's attention there. The young noble and his knight jump the fence and run toward the mage in the bath. The guy then turns around and is surprised to see the two staring at him mid-bath. Completely shocked, the two wonder why he's taking a bath right there. After all, imperial citizens do not bathe often, only on special occasions. The young noble's eyes widen and he notices the place is a mess. As the Lord's son, he demands a detailed report on what happened there. The knight leader then approaches and offers to explain the situation. But the young noble ignores him and says he was asking the man in the bath. The knight then reveals that the person is a mage, which leaves the noble surprised. With a sharp look, the knight leader recognizes the opportunity in the situation. The young noble brags, saying he is the heir to House Kaltz and a mage himself. He then points and orders the protagonist to get out of the bath and greet him. Nobles usually provoke mages to confirm whether they are powerful or not. A mage who responds calmly to a provocation is considered weak by them. But a mage who gets angry at the provocation is considered very strong and powerful. The guy remembers what Lucy said and wonders if that is a mage's provocation. With his arms crossed and a serious expression, the young mage refuses the noble's order. Completely shocked, the young noble yells and asks what he just said. With an angry face, the noble cannot believe the mage is refusing to obey him. He accuses him of challenging him, but the guy asks why he should do what he orders. The noble then orders his knight to drag the fraud out of the bath. The protagonist catches on to the act and thinks the noble's acting is not half bad. With a slight smile, he decides that if this is how it will be, he is going to play along. Suddenly, the mage explodes with fury and calls him a fraud with a dark aura. The two are completely terrified by the shift in attitude and the mage's power. The young man then raises his hand and, with a shout, starts controlling the bathwater. Pieces of wood and other objects start floating in the air around everyone. Desperate, the knight begs him to stop and apologizes for the rudeness. The objects then fall to the ground and smoke rises from the firewood that was burning. The mage stretches and thinks that should be enough to make them back off. Thoroughly spooked, the young noble and his knight are completely terrified and unable to react. The protagonist thinks things went bad and that he might have overdone it a bit. Now he wonders if he is going to be kicked out of Baron Kaltz's castle because of the mess. Later, we see he was invited to the castle, and the lord thanks him for accepting. The baron then apologizes for his son, and Ain says he was the one who crossed the line. The noble asks about his companion, and the guy says she stayed at the inn. Actually, Lucy was being protected by the knights, who treated her like his sister. Looking at a crystal chandelier on the ceiling, the protagonist says he understands the situation. The baron then asks his master's name, and the young man reveals it is Lady Eurydice. The lord recognizes her and asks if she headed south, since there is a magic academy there. But the noble is confused because she did not go to the duchies of Pakar or Roxran. The guy asks what he means, and the baron says things are tense. He then reveals that the duchy of Pakar has had its eye on Roxran lately. Hearing this news, the protagonist wonders if that might end up turning into a war. The baron then looks at him and asks if the young mage is also heading south. But the guy says he is going east in search of the world's great mysteries. With a smile, the noble says he understands and that he will give him a parting gift. The protagonist is surprised by the offer and wonders what the gift might be. A large wooden chest is placed in front of him, and he wonders what is inside. The baron then encourages him to open the chest to see what is inside the box. With a little hesitation, the young mage approaches and opens the lid of the wooden chest. With wide eyes, he is completely shocked by what he sees inside the chest. It was a staff that belonged to a great archmage of the past, a very rare item. The weapon's name was Windstep, and the guy repeats the name out loud in surprise. The protagonist then takes the staff in his hands and feels the magic item's power. The Baron says the staff suits him perfectly, and the young man feels awkward. He thinks it just looks like a common mage cosplay prop and nothing very special. But the guy admits that even so, it is really nice to get such a cool gift. The noble says it is a token of gratitude, and the young man thanks him for his kindness. With the staff in hand, he accepts the gift and gets ready for his next journey. Back at the inn, Lucy urgently calls for him, and the guy runs to see what happened. When he arrives, he asks what is wrong, and she seems to be very worried about something. The girl says it is something very serious and looks at him with a panicked expression. She then grabs his arm tightly and pulls him into the inn room. A mysterious voice says they need him, and we see a crow trapped in a cage. The guy is confused and wonders what a crow is doing inside a cage. The knight leader explains that a hunter caught it, but his sister stopped him. Lucy then jokes, saying he is a raven and the bird is a crow, so it is destiny. With a cute face, she keeps blabbering about her crazy destiny theory. With sparkling eyes, the girl asks if he does not think that is truly destiny. The mage apologizes for the trouble and tells them to go ahead and eat the crow. He then turns to the hunter and asks what kind of nonsense he is talking about. The man thanks him for checking and says he will eat it for lunch too. Suddenly, a voice begs for help inside the mage's head, and it startles him. The guy then yells for the hunter to wait and picks up the crow in his hands, curious. He asks what the bird is, and the crow begs for help in his mind again. The young man insists and asks what it is, and the crow's voice keeps begging for help. The protagonist realizes the Moronius language does not work with the mysterious bird. The crow keeps begging, and the guy tells it to shut up for a second. With a vein popping on his forehead, the mage gets annoyed by the whole situation. Annoyed by the yelling, the young mage says he will save it and tells the bird to be quiet. The crow then goes silent and stares at him with its bright red eyes on the table. The protagonist smiles and thinks that even without understanding the words, the animal knows when to stop. Impressed, the hunter asks if he talked to the crow, and Anne confirms that he did. The girl gets excited and says that for now, they should leave the bird there with them. The knight leader praises her, and she says she seems to have a talent for magic, making the guy roll his eyes. Carefully, the young mage begins bandaging the little black crow's injured wing. He asks if it is good, and the girl agrees, saying the wing will heal very fast. The two then sit at the table watching the bird recover from the injury. The protagonist thinks that if he leaves it behind, the hunters will definitely eat it. Suddenly, the crow flaps its wings and climbs onto the guy's hand, getting his attention. With a cute face, the bird begs not to be abandoned because those people are scary. With a drop of sweat on his face, the young mage thinks this situation is a real pain. Not caring at all about his annoyance, the crow simply climbs up and sits on his shoulder. The girl then asks if they are going to take the bird, and he says yes until it heals. Excited by the idea, the girl says they then need to give their new friend a name. She suggests the name Obsidian because of the black eyes, and Ain notices the crow likes it. The guy thinks the name is too long and suggests Oberon, and the young woman agrees right away. Petting its head, he says that from that moment on, its name will be Oberon. The bird swells with pride and tells him to offer a tribute and receive its favor now. At that moment, the girl calls to him and suggests they travel with the Order of Knights. With a serious expression, the young woman says she thought about it, and it would be better if it was just the two of them. He imagines the knights and thinks bandits would not mess with them so easily. But the guy wonders what they would do if the knights were not heading in the same direction. The knight leader then shows up and asks why he looks so thoughtful and distressed. The man sits down and says that even for a mage, it is dangerous to travel alone with a woman. With a smile on his face, the knight then turns to the young man and proposes a deal. He reveals they were on their way to catch a monster in the Katina territory. Surprised by the revelation, the protagonist asks what kind of monster that would be. The mood in the room gets tense as the guy waits for the knight leader's answer. The man asks if he knows the manticore and invites him to hunt it with the group. The manticore then pops into his mind, a fierce creature full of sharp teeth. The beast is known for being cruel and enjoying taking its victims' lives for fun. Shocked by the proposal, the young man asks if he is serious about hunting the creature. With a smile, the knight says he does not want to drag him into any unnecessary danger. But the man reveals he would not stop him if he offered to help with the hunt. The protagonist stays quiet for a moment, thinking about the knight's proposal. The guy says he is out, but the leader stops him and asks him to listen to the end. The knight explains that what he wants to ask is not about hunting the monster. He reveals they are an order of knights founded by the monastic order of the celestial god. The man says that when they mentioned they were going to catch the manticore, something unexpected happened. He explains that the priests of the territory forcefully demanded a mage's cooperation. The knight is certain they offended the mage and asks in to smooth things over. The young man thinks the proposal is not bad, because coming from a mage, the effect would be different. He just needs to calm a mage down, and in exchange, he gets an escort from the knight order. With a determined look, the protagonist accepts the deal and says they should go together. The scene then takes us to the blue sky, and we discover that traveling with them was comfortable. The group from the Knights of Santiago were all people of very good character. Because of this, the journey became completely stress-free for him. Around the campfire, one of the men calls to the mage, who looks at him holding a skewer. But the guy's only complaint is that the knights try to convert him at every turn. All the men gather around and invite him to learn the word of God with them. Skewer in hand, the young man declines, and the group is shocked by his response. The protagonist thinks he did not expect them to push their religion so hard. Their leader says it is a shame, and the mage asks what he means by that. The man explains that if he could hear the voice of God, he could become a cleric. With a thoughtful look, the guy reflects on the idea of being able to hear the voice of God. He wonders if he could ask God why he reincarnated with a status window. At that moment, we see one of the knights, named Ditchtry, reading his book in silence. With a determined look, the young man turns and asks if he can study with them. The knight then starts teaching everything he knows to the mage, who listens closely. Meanwhile, the little crow Oberon sleeps peacefully on its new master's shoulder. With the girl sleeping on his shoulder, Ditchtry praises the young mage's good attitude. Feeling sleepy, the guy thanks the knight for the compliment and keeps reading his book. The man is confused and asks why he is thanking him, since he did not say anything. Spooked, the knight says he did not speak, and ain't is sure he heard someone. The guy then wonders if the voice he heard was not human and gets suspicious. A mysterious voice then whispers, and the mage realizes he is not going crazy. Ditchtry backs away in fear, completely lost as to what is going on there. The protagonist wonders if the entity he spoke to cannot be called human. He then stands up and points to the sky, yelling that the voice belongs to a god. The voice then replies that it probably is a god, leaving the guy even more shocked. Annoyed by the answer, the young man glares at the sky with an expression of pure anger. He then yells, asking why he was reincarnated and what the status window was. But to his surprise, the mysterious voice just gives a little laugh and ignores him. The mage gets angry and yells for the voice to answer his questions immediately. Suddenly, a bright light shines in the sky, and the protagonist realizes the voice is gone. The knight stares at him and asks what happened and why he was glowing. With wide eyes, the young man realizes the entity truly left. In disbelief, he calls out to the voice, but gets no answer from the starry sky. Desperate, the mage grabs the knight and yells for God to come back and talk to him. The camp turns into a mess with the young man yelling and the knight asking for calm. After the outburst, he starts studying the scriptures like a madman with fire in his eyes. His only goal now is to manage to talk to that god again at any cost. With that, a system window appears showing he acquired the divine arts skill. The system then congratulates him and tells him to keep up the good work. Surprised, the guy realizes the new skill appeared much faster than expected. The system tells him to take an interest in God and study him to make him more satisfied. The protagonist wonders if it was really God who gave him that new skill. He then imagines that God is an author who brought him into the world just for fun. Annoyed, the guy realizes his level is still too low to have a conversation with the god. He then thinks there is nothing he can do and that he needs a new plan of action. The mage decides he will find more mysteries and gather points to get stronger. Glancing at the sky, he promises he will strengthen his divine arts and win. A few days later, we see a sunny forest and the group continues their journey. Suddenly, the Order of Knights is attacked by a group of mysterious men. Their leader jumps into the battle and defends against the attacks with his sharp sword. One of the enemies falls to his knees on the ground, completely defeated by the knight. With a dirty chest, the man approaches and asks if the mage is feeling alright. With the girl by his side, Ain says he is and that there was no problem with him. The older knight looks at him, and Ain says he heard he used to be a mercenary. With a smile, the man confirms it and says he made a name for himself in his youth. He explains he uses the nickname Elder because many would challenge him if they knew his name. The protagonist then wonders if the old man is so famous that he would be recognized. With his sword raised, the knight leader yells that they took care of the bandits. Then all the other knights cheer in celebration of their great victory. One of the men then informs his master that the path splits in two just ahead. The east leads to the count's castle, and the west to the forest where the manticore lives. The elder then points and says the forest where the mage they are looking for lives is that way. With a smile, he messes up the guy's hair and tells them to hurry up. The young man then asks the man to wait, as he needs to take care of something before leaving. He tells Lucy to go ahead, meet the mage, and then go to Katina's place. Worried about the young woman, the guy asks if she will be okay going on her own. She says she is not a child and that she will get to her aunt's place quickly using that shortcut. With a smile on her face, the young woman says goodbye to her companion and goes on her way. The two watch her leave and the protagonist wonders if she really will be okay. With a determined look, he thinks he needs to wrap things up and go after her soon. The leader asks where his little sister went, and the mage says she just ran ahead. The guy then reminds him that they will meet with that mage shortly, and they head out. With a mischievous look, the knight asks if the young man is mentally prepared for this. He explains that mages are hard to deal with, and the order really annoyed the one they are going to see. Annoyed, the guy wonders why they need to clean up someone else's mess. Not knowing what to say, the man just makes a funny face at the young mage. One of the knights then reveals it is because the order paid them for the service. The protagonist understands and thinks it is no wonder they all wear such nice armor. The elder says it is not like the mage is going to take him down, and that it will all work out in the end. With his staff in hand, he thinks this is the first time he will meet another mage. Then they arrive in a dark forest and see a house with green smoke coming out. Inside, the toxic smoke spreads and we see it took out several rats. It was Mangacapped, a botanical mage who is brewing a potion in her cauldron. A priest approaches and asks the mage to lend her magic to the knights. With a dark glare, he warns that the village is under the order's jurisdiction. With a disgusted look, the mage stares at the man, not liking that approach at all. She says that if they want help, the least they can do is eat her food with a nice smile. The woman then dares them not to run away after smelling her cooking. With a creepy smile, she calls for the Knights of the Order to taste the dish. Outside, the protagonist approaches the house and wonders what a plant mage is. The knight confirms it and says Manny is a very famous plant mage. She not only manipulates plants but also creates potent drugs with poison toxins. Since they needed a strong poison for the Manticore, everything came together well. Suddenly, a horrible smell wafts over, and the knights cover their noses in disgust. But the young mage realizes he has smelled that scent before and gets suspicious. With that, the two walk up to the house's door to see what is going on. The mage then opens the door and with a laugh, says she was waiting for them. The knight leader recognizes her immediately and covers his nose with his hand to protect himself. With a creepy smile, the woman says she is glad they managed to make it. She then invites them to enjoy the feast she prepared for all of them. In the house, we see various herbs hanging from the ceiling, drying for her magic potions. The knights hold bowls with the food and cannot stand the strong smell. The elder says she did not need to prove her power, and she says she just served her harvest. The woman says that if they are not guests, they are free to leave whenever they want. Due to the unbearable smell, one of the knights cannot take it and ends up passing out at the table. The green smoke from the food rises, and the man falls to the floor completely unconscious. The mage then wonders if she did not overdose the dosage of her poison a bit. But to her surprise, she sees the young mage eating the soup with a hearty appetite. She wonders who that guy is to eat his soup with so much garlic like that. The woman walks over and asks if the guy is okay, and he looks at her with a full mouth. With a smile on his face, the young man says the food is incredibly delicious. Shocked, the mage cannot believe what she just heard from the guy in front of her. He then praises the garlic in the soup and says it tastes simply amazing. With that, the protagonist grabs a clove of garlic from the soup and eats it with relish. The mage and the knights are completely stunned by the scene they are witnessing. Annoyed by the situation, the woman grabs him and says enough is enough with this whole act. She reveals she has been a plant mage for 40 years and has never seen a crazy person like him. With a curious look, the woman in the hat asks what the young mage's name is. He then introduces himself as Ian Meredith Raven, and the mage is shocked by the name. Pointing her finger at him, the woman stares at him with an expression of surprise. She then falls to the floor and reveals he is the disciple of the flame mage, Lady Eridas. At night, the mage apologizes for being so rude to him earlier in the house. As an apology, she serves a huge feast for him and the knights. The protagonist thinks the boiled chicken from earlier was already very delicious to him. Around the table, the mage asks if they are really hunting the feared manticore. With a dark glare, she warns that the hunt will not be easy for them at all. The woman reveals that even Count Katina hired hunters, but they were all defeated. The knight leader then says he is ready for whatever comes during the hunt. The mage then turns to him and asks if the man has ever caught a manticore before. With a serious look, the elder reveals he caught a few when he was younger. She then turns to the protagonist and asks if he has ever had that experience. The woman says that if he was trained by Eridas, he must already be a complete and powerful mage. The young man then asks why she does not lend her wisdom to the knights. He remembers a lesson from his master about what a mage should do in moments like this. She taught him to never take lightly the moments when he needs to move of his own free will. The guy thinks he does not necessarily need to go and catch the manticore with his bare hands. But if he refuses the proposal, bad rumors might spread about him in the Mage Circle. The Mage Circle is an organization from the Owen Academy where mages gather to train. If that happens, he will not be able to face his master or ask other mages for help. With a smile on his face, the protagonist looks at the knights with a confident expression. He then says there is nothing else to do and that he will join the group on the hunt. The next day, the group gathers to begin the hunt for the dreaded manticore. They then enter a dark, gloomy forest with a very sinister vibe. The protagonist thinks Lucy must be waiting for him and hopes she is okay. Suddenly, the crow Oberon takes flight and warns its master that it found the creature. With a serious look, the bird warns that there is a manticore right near them. The knight leader walks over and asks if something is wrong with the young mage. The guy then says that according to his crow, the creature is in that direction. Impressed by the bird's ability, the knight praises the little crow. The protagonist thinks that thanks to his skill, it was easy to get the crow used to speaking. Suddenly, the elder feels an incredible bloodlust and goes on high alert regarding the situation. The young man then steps closer and asks the leader if the manticore is also a monster. With a determined look, he wonders if he couldn't just persuade the creature. The mage says that if he actually manages to persuade the beast, she will tell Eridas everything. The protagonist thinks that instead of a compliment, she is going to snitch on him to his master. At that moment, one of the knights points to the forest and yells that the manticore is there. With that, our mage turns around and faces the man with a serious expression on his face. In the darkness, the creature's eyes glow, and the whole group braces for the worst. The young man then asks the mage and the elder not to leave his side under any circumstances. With his hand on his sword, the knight leader prepares for the battle ahead. He then reveals that all weapons were coated with the poison man he prepared. The arrows were covered in a special poison developed by the mage herself. Letting out a yell, the elder orders all his men to attack the creature at once. The protagonist just watches the scene in silence, waiting for the attack's outcome. Next, the poison arrows fly at high speed toward the monster. The creature then gets ready to take the impact of the arrows to its neck. But to everyone's surprise, the arrows simply bounce off the manticore's skin. The leader is shocked and cannot believe the arrows did not pierce the beast's hide. One of the knights asks what they should do, and the elder is left with no reaction. The creature then steps out of the darkness and with a laugh, says they need to attack again. With a drop of sweat on his face, the protagonist gets tense at the creature's appearance. He realizes the beast is right in front of them and there is no time to apply the poison again. With a clenched fist, the guy understands there is no other choice but to fight. With a furious shout, the young mage prepares to unleash all his power at once. The knights look at the ground and see all their arrows scattered there. Manny is shocked and cannot believe that kid actually managed to do that. Standing alone in front of the creature, the protagonist glares at the monster with a defiant look. The manticore then calls him an unusual human for wanting to speak to it directly. Relieved, the young man says he is glad to see the creature can understand his words. He then introduces himself as a mage and, with a smile, tells the creature to get out of there. But the creature gets angry and tells the young mage to eat a big piece of dirt. With a smile, the manticore asks what his problem is and what he is doing there. The creature steps closer and says that if he has something to say, he'd better say it quickly. The protagonist then stares down the monster with a serious expression and gets ready to speak. With a smile, the beast reveals that what it wants right now is to take him down. Suddenly, several crows take flight, and the sky is completely covered by them. The guy is confused by the answer and does not understand why it liked his honesty. The creature then invites him to join forces and destroy all those humans together. Shocked by the proposal, the young mage asks what the creature just said. The manticore then reveals its desire to taste the flesh of all its enemies. The creature says he will get a lot of gold and many women from this alliance. With a dark glare, the beast reveals that after having its fun, it will eliminate all of them. With its tongue out, the creature licks its lips, thinking that is the best part of all. The protagonist looks at the creature with a look of disdain and is not impressed. Without thinking twice, the guy spits on the ground in front of the creature in disgust. The young man then makes a rude gesture at the creature and calls it a piece of trash. The knight's jaws drop, completely shocked by the mage's attitude. With a determined look, the guy stares down the creature and braces for what is to come. The creature then slams its tail hard against the ground and gets ready to attack the mage. With a smile, the manticore says that attitude has made him worthy of being defeated by it. Suddenly, the guy is hit and someone wonders if that is the imperial tongue. The mage then shouts the word grow and uses her plant magic to help. Because of this, a large plant starts sprouting from the ground at high speed and saves the guy. With that, the large plant wraps around the creature and traps it with its strong branches. The elder is impressed by the strength of the magic the woman used on the creature. A massive wall of plants appears in front of the two, protecting the entire group. The leader asks what she did, and the mage yells that she swallowed the manticore whole. Hearing that, the knight realizes she used the plant to swallow the beast and the knights. The woman yells that they are not children, and that they will be able to handle it on their own. But suddenly, the plant explodes, and the elder is left in shock at the scene of destruction. With a leap, the man manages to get away from the explosion, narrowly saving himself. The protagonist then runs to his side and calls out for them to take cover together. Amidst the smoke, the knight asks if all his men are okay. Worried, the young mage walks over and also asks if the master is all right. The man replies that he is fine and turns to check on the other's condition. With a drop of sweat on his face, the protagonist is shocked by what he sees ahead. He finds Ditri lying on the ground, completely wounded after the explosion. The man apologizes and says he let the manticore escape, and the elder comforts him. The guy watches the scene with a smile on his face, not knowing how to react to that. He then says they all did their best and do not need to blame themselves. The young man thinks about how he just saw someone fade away right in front of him and is shaken by it. He remembers Ditri teaching him and how quickly he grew attached to him. With a lost look, the fallen knight thinks that everything feels very real now. He remembers that this is a world where fighting monsters is a normal thing. The guy realizes that the ends he saw in stories are now terrifyingly real. With a determined look, he approaches the body of the fallen knight on the ground. The protagonist calls out Dictri's name and prepares to use his magic on him. With a smile, he reminds him of what he said about the Bible and faith in God. He says that if they truly believe and pray, the heavens will surely open. With a tear in his eye, the knight agrees and is filled with hope by the words. The young man then stands up and, with his hands clasped, asks them all to pray together. Looking at the sky, he asks if the almighty heaven is watching. The mage yells that his fanatic fan is right there and is about to meet his maker. A voice then replies, saying his heaven is right there in front of him. He then places his hands on the knight, and a blue light begins to shine brightly. A huge blast of blue light occurs and lights up the entire dark forest. The elder is impressed and cannot believe the young mage's power. With the healing light in his hands, the protagonist prepares to save his friend. Surprised by his own power, the young man stares at his glowing hands, confused. In a celestial place, Ditri wakes up and finds himself before a great castle of light. A woman with blonde hair and a white dress appears and floats toward him. The knight is shocked and wonders if that woman is a real goddess. She says she is happy to see him, and the man bows with respect and admiration. He then wonders why God is there and realizes the place is heaven. With a smile, the goddess says he still has things to do in that world. Confused, the knight wonders what those things he needs to do could be. The goddess then says he needs to make her even more known among humans. She tells him to help the weak and fill the world with happiness through his good deeds. With a serious look, she asks him to help her apostle N, as it is her wish. Suddenly, the knight's eye glows, and he wakes up from his deep sleep. The other men yell that he woke up and that he is conscious again. Sitting on the ground, the man wonders what place this is and if he is truly alive. With a smile, he says the heavens really opened for him in that moment. The protagonist then walks over and calls out the name of the knight on the ground. With a smile, the young man asks what it feels like to come back from the afterlife. Ditcher then grabs his staff and asks what he is doing with it. With tears in his eyes, the knight asks if he was ordered by God to save him. The guy feels awkward about the reaction and does not know how to answer the man's question. He thinks he managed to use the divine arts with the church's help and was not wrong. Ian then confirms it and says God sent him because he still has things to do. The man remembers the goddess saying he still had things to do in that world. Completely shocked, the knight's jaw drops, speechless at the revelation. The mage finds the scene amusing and calls the man an apostle sent by God. The other knights grow suspicious and decide to keep an eye on the young mage for a while. With the group gathered, Ditry kneels in front of En like a servant of God. The mage and the elder watch, commenting on how energetic everyone is all of a sudden. The leader then gets excited and asks if they should go after the Manticore again. Ain says he will send Oberon ahead, and the knight gets worried about the danger. The guy says no and with a whistle, orders the crow to fly off and look for the creature. The elder is confused and does not understand why the young man is not worried about the bird. The protagonist thinks the Manticore is not just some weakling, and that he needs a plan. With a determined look, he says they need to crush the creature completely. Meanwhile, the Manticore attacks a city, and the residents scream in despair. The creature destroys everything in its path, and people run in terror for their lives. A young man sees his father lying on the ground and runs to try to help him in the chaos. The man tells him to get out of there, but the son refuses to leave his father behind. With wide eyes, the young man stares at the creature with a look of pure dread. The Manticore then approaches the man on the ground and glares at him with a cruel look. The father tells the creature to leave the city, and the young man angrily calls it a monster. The beast laughs at the scene and, with a mocking glare, prepares to attack the two humans. It then makes a proposal saying that if the son eliminates the father, it will spare the others. The young man refuses to fall into the trap and shields his father with his own body. With a smile, the creature says there is nothing to be done then and prepares to strike. The Manticore raises its paw and, with a furious scream, tells the young man to meet his maker. Desperate, the son screams for his father as the creature's claw comes down. But suddenly, a flash of light cuts through the air, stopping the giant monster's attack. We see that the one who saved the man was the elder, who arrived just in time to help. The knight leader attacks the Manticore with his sword and throws it far away. The two men then see that the Knights of Santiago have arrived to save them. The elder then yells, ordering all his men to brace for battle. The group of knights gets into position, ready to attack the creature. With an arrow in its face, the Manticore gets angry and calls them insignificant insects. The creature then looks at a rooftop and calls the man up there a scoundrel. From afar, the protagonist watches this scene and thinks this is a pointless fight. The Manticore gets annoyed and tells the mage to shut up and stay out of the fight. With a mocking smile, the young man says at least the creature has spirit. Angered by the insolence, the creature charges at full speed toward the mage. It says it will take care of the knights, but is going to deal with him first. The protagonist then turns around and faces the creature with an unfriendly expression. In the blink of an eye, the Manticore reaches the roof and gets ready to attack. The guy stays quiet for a moment and prepares to use his magic on the beast. With a smile on his face, the young mage prepares to face the creature alone. The knights watch the scene from afar, worried about what might happen. The creature then runs at high speed toward the young mage on the roof. With a confident smile, the protagonist prepares to face the beast alone. The Manticore is shocked to see that the arrow in its face does not stop it from fighting. Suddenly, the protagonist ducks, dodging the giant creature's surprise attack. The mage then yells and uses her magic to make the vegetation grow and trap the beast. A large plant begins to sprout from the ground and wraps around the Manticore's legs. Shocked, the creature wonders what that is and gets trapped in the woman's magic. The elder then yells, ordering his men to seize the chance and attack again. The knights step closer holding pots of oil, getting ready for the attack. They then throw the oil on the creature, leaving it completely soaked and angry. The Manticore gets furious at the cheap tricks and roars in anger at the knights. The mage then turns to the protagonist and says it is now his turn to act. With a determined look, the young man prepares to use his fire magic on the beast. He then points his finger and commands the fire to burn the creature once and for all. The mage's eye glows and a beam of fire shoots from his staff at high speed. The creature is then completely swallowed by the flames and starts screaming in agony. The young man watches the scene with a serious expression and a bit of pity. The city residents thank the knights for saving their lives. The elder looks at the guy with an expression of admiration and pride on his face. Oberon then asks if his master is feeling left out, and he tells the crow to shut up. The protagonist thinks they are probably scared of him after everything. One of the men calls him, and the guy turns around to see who is talking to him. The father and son who were saved thank the young mage for helping them. Feeling awkward, he says he did not do it to be thanked and gets embarrassed. The knight leader then calls him, and the guy turns to hear what he is going to say. The man congratulates him and says it was thanks to him that they managed to capture the Manticore. Embarrassed, the young man asks them to raise their heads and not bow to him. The elder thinks such a humble personality is rare for a mage with so much power. He is sure the guy will win over the nobles and become someone important. Suddenly, a group of knights approaches and asks if they were the ones who caught the beast. The man asks who they are, and one of the knights introduces himself as a servant of the castle. He says Count Katina invited them to the castle and asked them to come along. At the castle, the count welcomes the brave warriors who saved the city. At a grand feast, he congratulates them for facing a monster in the name of the heavens. With a cup in his hand, the noble praises the group for being righteous individuals. The elder says it was nothing special, and the count regrets the lack of knights in his castle. With a satisfied look, he promises his associates will no longer interfere with Manny. He then turns to the protagonist and says he heard about him from his niece. With a full mouth, the guy is surprised and does not know how to react to that revelation. The crow warns him that the man is talking to him, but the young man keeps eating. The count gets annoyed by the mage's attitude and wonders if he is ignoring him. With a quick glance, the protagonist notices the noble's annoyance and apologizes. He says the food was delicious and that he was responding to his crow. The count then says he heard he took good care of his niece and thanks him. A treasure chest is brought out and the golden light blinds the young mage's eyes. Inside the chest, he finds a golden magic scroll and is impressed. The scroll unrolls, revealing several ancient writings in a strange language. What he does not know is that this is a scroll that activates immediately. The young man stares at it with an expression of surprise and curiosity about the magic item. He then tries to touch the scroll, and a bright light shines in his hands on the table. Impressed by the item, the young man thinks every word on the scroll screams high quality. The count then asks if he liked the gift and says he prepared it especially for him. With an awkward smile, the guy thanks him for the gift and stores it carefully. The noble says it was nothing and that he is just thanking him for bringing Lucy back. With a snap of his fingers, he calls for his niece, who is waiting. From the hall door, the young woman enters wearing noble clothes and a very weird hat. Lucy then approaches the table with a smile on her face and an elegant posture. The protagonist cannot hold back his laughter and wonders what kind of outfit that is. Hand over his mouth, he wonders where she found such a weird hat to wear. The girl then sits next to her uncle with a calm and slightly nervous expression. She greets him and asks how he has been, and the guy replies that he is doing well. The elder notices the exchanged glances and asks if she is the young mage's girlfriend. The count then catches the guy's attention and says he has a proposal for him. With a serious look, the young woman says they are on a journey to avenge her family. The noble then asks if he would be willing to lend his strength to the journey. The protagonist realizes this was the true reason for the golden scroll. He thinks he can provide support with his magic, just like he did with the mana core. If everything goes right, he might still get a huge reward from the count and Lucy. With his decision made, he faces the noble and the young woman with a serious, determined look. With a smile, he says that if they need a humble mage, he will tag along. 3 days later, Lucy says her uncle is very sorry he cannot say goodbye to the guy. The elder says they will gladly welcome him if he visits the Talian territory. With a smile on his face, the protagonist says he is looking forward to their next meeting. He thinks the number of knights has dropped because Count Katina annexed them. The young man says goodbye to his friend and thanks him for all the help he gave. The knight then invites him to visit Trafaro Island when he has some time. He explains it is a floating island in the Coral Sea and that he will be welcome there. The guy asks if that is his real name, and the man confirms it is. With a smile, he introduces himself as Salvator of House Orcus, shocking the young woman. Lucy's jaw drops and she wonders if he is the White Wolf Salvator. The protagonist is confused by the name, and the girl cannot believe he does not know him. She explains that the White Wolf Brotherhood served as a mercenary band for the Emperor. With a group of skilled men, their leader became a legend in the Empire. The Emperor of the time granted him the honorable title of Sword Master. With wide eyes, the young woman points and says that man is the Sword Master. With a proud smile, the man confirms it and gets ready to say goodbye to the group. The protagonist just looks at him with a bored face and does not seem very interested. Everyone is shocked by his reaction, and the elder finds the situation amusing. Confused, the guy asks what it means, and the man says he is just like him. The knights think the young man is going to take down the Sword Master and get excited. With a smile on his face, the knight says it is nothing and turns to leave. He and the mage get ready to leave and send their regards to Elidis. Ditry says goodbye and tells them they need to meet again someday in the future. The knight calls the mage's name and steps forward for a handshake. The two shake hands and say their goodbyes with a friendly smile. Staff in hand, the guy says that when things calm down, he will head to the ruins. With a smile, the man says they will see each other again soon in the future. The knight says goodbye, and the young man watches as he walks off into the horizon. With that, a new journey begins, and the protagonist prepares for what is to come. The scene then changes, and we see our mage walking alone down a road. With a scroll in hand, the young man says every word there screams high quality. The count asks if he liked the gift and says he prepared it especially for him. With an awkward smile, the guy thanks him for the gift and stores it carefully. The noble says it was nothing and that he is just thanking him for bringing Lucy back. With a snap of his fingers, he calls for his niece, who is waiting. From the hall door, the young woman enters wearing noble clothes and a very weird hat. Lucy then approaches the table with a smile on her face and an elegant posture. The protagonist cannot hold back his laughter and wonders what kind of outfit that is. Hand over his mouth, he wonders where she found such a weird hat to wear. The girl then sits next to her uncle with a calm and slightly nervous expression. She greets him and asks how he has been, and the guy replies that he is doing well. The elder notices the exchange glances and asks if she is the young mage's girlfriend. The count catches the guy's attention and says he has a proposal for him. With a serious look, the young woman says they are on a journey to avenge her family. The noble asks if he would be willing to lend his strength to the journey. The protagonist realizes this was the true reason for the golden scroll. He thinks he can provide support with his magic just like he did with the mana core. If everything goes right, he might still get a huge reward from the Count and Lucy. With his decision made, he faces the noble and the young woman with a serious, determined look. With a smile, he says that if they need a humble mage, he will tag along. 3 days later, Lucy says her uncle is very sorry he cannot say goodbye to the guy. The elder says they will gladly welcome him if he visits the Talian territory. With a smile on his face, the protagonist says he is looking forward to their next meeting. He thinks the number of knights has dropped because Count Katina annexed them. The young man says goodbye to his friend and thanks him for all the help he gave. The knight invites him to visit Trufaro Island when he has some time. He explains it is a floating island in the Coral Sea and that he will be welcomed there. The guy asks if that is his real name and the man confirms it is. With a smile, he introduces himself as Salvator of House Orcus, shocking the young woman. Lucy's jaw drops and she wonders if he is the White Wolf Salvator. The protagonist is confused by the name and the girl cannot believe he does not know him. She explains that the White Wolf Brotherhood served as a mercenary band for the Emperor. With a group of skilled men, their leader became a legend in the Empire. The Emperor of the time granted him the honorable title of Sword Master. With wide eyes, the young woman points and says that man is the Sword Master. With a proud smile, the man confirms it and gets ready to say goodbye to the group. The protagonist just looks at him with a bored face and does not seem very interested. Everyone is shocked by his reaction, and the elder finds the situation amusing. Confused, the guy asks what it means, and the man says he is just like him. The knights think the young man is going to take down the Sword Master and get excited. With a smile on his face, the knight says it is nothing and turns to leave. He and the mage get ready to leave and send their regards to Elidis. Ditri says goodbye and tells them they need to meet again someday in the future. The knight calls the mage's name and steps forward for a handshake. The two shake hands and say their goodbyes with a friendly smile. Staff in hand, the guy says that when things calm down, he will head to the ruins. With a smile, the man says they will see each other again soon in the future. The knight says goodbye, and the young man watches as he walks off into the horizon. With that, a new journey begins and the protagonist prepares for what is to come. The scene then changes and we see our mage walking alone down a road. A large blue flag with a golden symbol waves in the wind at the top of a mast. In full armor, Count Katina prepares to lead his troops into battle. Crying, the young woman asks her uncle to punish the man who took her mother's life. With a hateful glare, the noble thinks of the name Graham, his niece's fiancé. He remembers that the man not only took his sister's life, but also forced a marriage. The noble then considers using Lucy as a shield to marry her off to one of his vassals. With a determined look, he decides he will have a talk with Lucy when it is all over. He steps onto a platform and says he will bring the hateful avenger to justice. With a battle cry, the count orders all his men to follow him into battle. The soldiers cheer excitedly and prepare to follow their lord to war. At night in a camp, we see several tents and a campfire right in the middle. In a large cauldron, several metal spoons are boiling in the fire's hot water. A woman asks what Anne is doing and he says he is boiling his spoons. Confused, she asks why and if they are going to eat the spoons somehow. On the other side, two knights whisper that the mage is making spoon soup. Lucy is shocked and wonders what sterilizing is and what that means. The guy explains it is a kind of mystery, and she would not understand if he explained. The two knights wonder if that is a mystery and get curious about it. Feeling awkward, one of the men walks over and asks the mage to boil their meat too. Annoyed, the young man yells that it is not soup and refuses to help the knights. At the camp, we see the soldiers sitting around the campfire waiting for food. With an empty bowl in hand, the girl catches Anne's attention and says she was thinking. She reminds him of the reward she promised and says it is time to pay up. The girl says she was going to give him gold, but he already got enough from her uncle. With a mischievous smile, she looks at him and asks what the result of his thoughts is. The girl then reveals the magic sword Anirecap, a gift from a fairy to the Baron. Legend says the Baron fell in love with the fairy, and with the sword he became a savior. With a bored look, the guy wonders what kind of fantasy romance that is. He questions why the Talians are still just barons if they have a sword like that. Annoyed, the young woman says the story is 400 years old and there is a reason for it. With a smile, she reveals the sword is buried in the first Baron's tomb. The guy realizes that to get the sword, they would have to dig up her ancestor's tomb. Shocked, he wonders why the Baron sealed the sword in his own tomb. He asks if she treats her ancestor's tomb like a time capsule. With a smile, he asks if she should not use the sword for her own family. Annoyed, the girl says it is better than being used by people who only care about their title. She reveals she has not recovered anything yet, but thanks to him, she now has a chance. Hands in her lap, the young woman says he deserves something just as valuable in return. Irritated, the girl says that is why she is giving him that precious heirloom. Losing patience, she calls him an idiot and runs away from him into the night. With his hand on his head, the guy wonders if he did not go a bit too far with her. A knight then approaches and says the count has a request for the young mage. He reveals that the mercenaries who escaped are looting villages in the region. From afar, two men watch a crow, and one says it looks like the mage's. Suddenly, the crow spreads its wings and yells that its master is there and has arrived. Shocked by the scene, the three men cannot believe the crow is talking. At that moment, a voice emerges, and the protagonist appears in front of the three men. With unfriendly faces, the men turn and stare down the young mage. Staff in hand, he asks what they think they are doing there. In a room lit by candles, the count asks the young mage for a favor, and he listens. The guy just sighs and watches the scene with a look of sheer boredom on his face. Staff in hand, he says the weed is a lost cause, and the man does not understand. The protagonist then plants his staff in the ground, and a blue energy begins to glow. With his eyes glowing, he reveals that a wicked stain has soaked that entire field. He says the stolen spirit of the first Baron Tarian is furious right there. Crying, the man asks what they should do, and the young man tells him to wait. With a determined look, the mage tells the spirit to shut up and stares at it. Hands on his head, he focuses and prepares to use his divine arts. The guy yells that heaven has spoken, and that the spirit's anger will only be appeased with Lucy. From a distance, he senses more bad vibes and runs to see what is going on. The man laments that thanks to the usurper, his land is falling into ruin. The protagonist walks through the city and hears the rumors that have spread about him. People throw tomatoes at a poster, and the guy says that if his presence bothers them, he will leave. Suddenly, one of the tomatoes hits the poster, leaving it completely stained red. In the middle of the street, Lucy shows up wearing a wedding dress and tosses a tomato in the air. We see the knights hugging the residents and comforting them about the situation. Because of this, the people of Tarian began to doubt the usurper Graham in revolt. To escape the misfortune, they demanded that Lucy be enthroned as the new leader. Thanks to that, the Count's army got its spirit back and marched to the fortress. But the Count refuses to step onto a dishonorable battlefield and gets angry at the idea. One of the men reveals that Ain is spreading rumors that the land is cursed. He gets angry and says if they stick with a mage like that, their honor will be stained. The protagonist wonders why they are believing the rumors he started himself. Hand over his face, he cannot believe they do not trust the words of a mage. One of the knights says he is obviously trying to trick them with his words. The Count thinks they decided everything is a lie and that this is a ridiculous stance. The guy understands that knights are the stars of any war, and the Count knows that. With a smile, he realizes that without knights, there is no real battle for him. In the end, he has no other choice but to listen to what his knights say. Suddenly, one of the knights calls the mage's name and stares at him seriously. With a bright blue light, he says that if his presence bothers them so much, he will bow out. The boy then turns around and gets ready to leave and abandon the group once and for all.